Welcome to Leadership Launchpad Project. I'm Rob Kalwarowsky, and as always, the yang to my yin. Susan's Hobson's here, dressed up in a winter sweater, cold as ice, and I'm also cold as ice as well out here in Edmonton this week. Now, Susan, how are you?
I feel like that trip to Tulum in January, as glorious as it was, that kind of set me up for failure because ever since I've been back, I've been freezing and
It's a
dreaming
sign. It's a
of
sign.
summer. Yeah, right. Yeah, I definitely know what you're referring to there, sir. But I think it's a sign that I'm about ready to head to my cottage and for it to be spring.
To move south.
We'll
Alrighty,
get
as
there.
always.
We'll get there. I
That's
assure
right.
you.
As always, we got to start off with a quote. And I have one here
Mhm.
from Kristen Lohr. And she says, growth is uncomfortable because you've never been here before. You've never been this version of you. So give yourself a little grace and breathe through it.
Tell us why you picked that one, sir.
It's been coming up a lot lately with a lot of my leaders and one-on-ones, as well as I've been sort of transitioning and understanding better what transition I'm making right now. And I think it's just something that folks can sometimes get lost in, right? And it's like, I should be done. Or why am I not, quote unquote, there yet? Right?
Mhm.
And often that's a part of us that's triggered that, sees a certain thing and it's hard and it hurts. But the part of it is that your body and your mind are naturally designed to heal, and they will heal at the rate that is possible in that moment in your life. And that requires a little bit of stepping back and sort of downshifting those parts of you that are trying to get it done now.
Mhm.
And of course, I had a lot of that through my healing journey, and it set me back in terms of getting more stable. But I think that's a part for folks out there is, and it's hard, right? But it's like looking at this growth as this is you. You got to enjoy the discomfort because you're taking that next step, and it takes time, and it's okay.
I'd go so far as to say, and it's proof and evidence that you're right on track, right?
Right?
Like that's the very essence of nature of our cells in our body. We're constantly evolving and changing as human beings, right? And so I just know from being a pro athlete, I was uncomfortable if I wasn't uncomfortable the next day after a workout. That discomfort was how I knew I was growing. So I would take it one step further and say, yeah, celebrate the discomfort, because if you're uncomfortable, it means you're outside the comfort zone. And if you're outside the comfort zone, you're in the growth zone.
Absolutely. And we have a special guest, a man who has gone through the discomfort and absolutely changed, incredibly so. And I heard of him through our friend Matt Popesel's Lead the People podcast. And so back in their archives, they have an interview with our special guest. And our special guest this week is Ron Garfield. He's an entrepreneurial executive leadership coach and dream team architect at Peak Coaching. Now, Ron, before we get into a little more about you, what do you think about the quote?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. First of all, I am just so happy to be here. And what did you do? What kind of intuition did you use to come up with that quote? Because
It's my gift.
thank you. And I appreciate that gift because it sent chills through me.
Wow.
It just sent chills through me. Personal transformation, discomfort got me to where I am today. My own journey, my own healing, put me on a path to have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And even when I went to my coach training years ago, one of my statements was about helping people lean into their discomfort in order to transform. Susan, what you said about, and I'd never connected this until you just said it, about physically working out and being sore and recognizing that that's how you're growing and getting stronger. It was really in that moment that you just said that, that I put those dots together with internal transformation and discomfort and working out and growing as an athlete. So thanks for that connection, because I am all about that kind of mind body connection as well. I have I have a saying, I don't know where it came from, that says when the mind gets right, the body gets tight. And it's just kind of works for me. But I love that quote so much. And one of the things I'm really focused on in my work right now with my clients, and Rob, to your point, is finding those areas of discomfort and taking people out of their comfort zone. And sometimes it comes organically and really easy. Other times it's like pulling it out of them. But even for my own self, I still have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like prepping for something like this, I'm uncomfortable. I'm nervous as hell because I'm a perfectionist. That's one of my, things. And boy, I want it to be so right. But I've also learned by being uncomfortable that I don't have to be right. And I go into a coaching session, it's, I want my coaching sessions to be perfect. It's okay if they're not perfect. In fact, chances are my clients aren't even going to know if it's not perfect. And I've already designed an alliance with them that gives us both permission not to be perfect and both permission to make mistakes. So if I say to a client, hey, can I try something on for size? I'm working on something myself as a coach. Can I try something on? Is it okay if I make a mistake? They're always going to say, sure. Right? They're always going to say sure because I'm pushing them to try new things on for size. Why shouldn't I do the same? So,
Ron, back that truck up a little bit. Let's rewind the game tape on all of this in terms of perfectionism and you coaching people. Let's rewind the game tape and tell us where this whole mission began for you, sir. When did you decide to do this type of work in the world? What inspired that choice?
I've always taken an unconventional route to get to where I was. I never finished college, yet I became an incredibly successful entertainment executive for 30 years. Most of my contemporaries had masters, they were lawyers, and I was like a 2-year degree in AA and journalism, right? But what happened to me was a moment in time, a series of moments, but back in 2012, my life was going down a path that was not working. And I put my whole life, including my marriage and everything that had to do with my life, at risk and hit a really bad bottom. And that was the first time that I ever realized that I needed to ask for help. And I was uncomfortable and I didn't have a choice but to change or make a change. And that's where my journey really began back in 2012. And fast forward to about August of 2014, I was at a dinner party in Southern California, and I was talking to this fascinating woman, and she had been a senior executive at Mattel and had written a book about women hitting the glass ceiling. And we were about the same age. And she asked me, she goes, "So what do you want to do when you grow up?"
I love that.
And I said, I would really like to teach. I would really like to teach. And we talked about that. And she goes, teaching is a noble profession, but you can't make a living at it. Have you ever thought about coaching? And I literally said to her, "What is coaching?" And for the next 2 hours, we talked about it, and we met every 3 months for the next year for coffee and talked about coaching. And finally, I did a lot of research and I decided that I was going to take a year while I was still working. I felt at that point in time, I was aging out of my career in the entertainment industry. I could see it, I could feel it. I knew something needed to shift. So I enrolled in a pretty extensive coaching program with Coactive Training, one of the most reputable coaching companies in the world. And I went through their entire certification, their entire coaching curriculum, and that's how I began my coaching journey. And then when I ended up leaving corporate America, almost 6 years ago, I had a little bit of a coaching practice going because you needed to do that in order to, get your certification and get your hours. We ended up moving to Central Oregon. And that's when I kind of launched my coaching practice. And it's been an evolution for me ever since, not only in building the business, but in my own evolution as a coach. I'm a coach who believes you need to be a coach or have a coach, should I say. So I have a coach right now. And how can I coach my clients if I'm not walking the walk and doing the talk at the same time? So that's how really I ended up getting here. 30 years as a corporate executive. I ran companies. It was the entertainment industry. It was like working in a microwave oven, for 30 years, probably one of the most brutal industries you'll ever be in. But what struck me about that industry and where I am today is I never felt like I had a purpose in that industry, right? We were making money. That was what it was all about. I was on the business side. So I negotiated huge agreements with cable operators and satellite providers, multi-million dollar deals. But it was just a means to an end and there was no purpose. So when I found coaching, and I think it was a result of my work on myself, where I started kind of feeling things in here, everything had always been up here in the head. I started feeling things in here. I started developing a different sense of myself and who I really was. And I could see the change in me, right? And I could see that impact that I was having on people in my life who were watching me change. And, it's kind of like once you hit a bottom, you have nowhere to go but up. And if you stay the same, then you're destined to repeat the same mistakes that got you to the bottom to begin with. And again, I was at that point in my life that I didn't want to do that any longer. And so
Ron,
here you have me.
Yeah. I'm curious, why do you think it takes folks to hit those bottoms or those glass ceilings or those brick walls to start asking for help?
Wow. I think that in my experience, we all have so many blind spots, caution areas, and saboteurs. We all have created narratives and loops in our head that's many times we've had that are as a result of childhood that tell us they lie to us. Saboteurs lie to you. And there's a justification lie for why you respond a certain way over many, many years. And I think until people become really self-aware of that, and I don't think it always has to be that somebody hits a bottom in order to ask for help. I think in leaders, for example, leaders who are self-aware and recognize that in a evolving workplace like it is now, with leadership changing all of the time, that they recognize that there needs to be a different way of doing things. So I think it comes at you a couple of different ways. It could be the sudden slam like I had. And that's always been my MO. I needed to get slapped across the face. I needed to hit my head against a wall a million times before it finally dawned on me. I need to make a change. And there's other people who are a lot smarter than I am who see that, oh, I maybe need to ask for help here. And one of the things that I've learned from coaching leaders and about myself, that as a leader, one of the greatest attributes you can have is the ability and willingness to ask for help. I mean, that is a sign of a leader, in my opinion, that really sets an example and models for the people that they're leading. I can't do it alone. In the coactive model, there's 5 dimensions of leadership, and there is the leader in front. And the leader in front is the leader who sets the vision, sets the direction for the team, the organization, or whatever. But it's not just them leading, going charge. It's them welcoming the people that they work with and outstretching their arms and going, I can't do this without you. Right? And all of that comes, and I think one of the things that I learned about myself and why coaching in this model resonated so much with me is that all leadership starts from being a leader within, right? It's a self-acknowledgement, right? It's a self-empowerment that you deserve to be here. But if you approach it from a place of humility, you approach it from a place of vulnerability, which you need to do in order to build trust, you create a whole different dynamic. I didn't know any of that when I was an executive for 30 years. I mean, I was a good manager. I was a good leader. People enjoyed working for me. And I think that's why this became so, it was a good transition for me. But I was so bogged down in the saboteur voices that I had that were tied into my ego, that were tied into my narcissism, that were tied into my need to be right and to control situations under any circumstances. It was because I had a hole in here that said I wasn't good enough. And that was a childhood thing. So I had this master saboteur, and I think, Rob, you and I talked a little bit about positive intelligence and mental fitness. The master saboteur, which is the judge, who is in my head, and mine was really subtle. Just, you're not good enough. Oh, I'd go into a room and I would feel like I had imposter syndrome because I was sitting in a room with people that were better educated than me, right? Who had a diploma, who had done all of these things. And here I was, So that judge is telling me I'm not good enough. So how do I show up? I'm going to stick my chest out. I'm going to try to make myself bigger than I am.
Let's unpack that positive. I wasn't privy to this conversation on the sideline, gentlemen, and nor was our audience. So what exactly are we alluding to here with this positive intelligence framework? Yeah,
so mental fitness and positive intelligence is a framework that I got involved in probably about 4 years ago. And I was invited to join a group of coaches, it's still ongoing, by a gentleman by the name of Shirzad Shamin. And Shirzad had been the CEO of the Coactive Training Institute, where I got my training. And initially, he reached out to all of these coaches and he offered them basically a grant to learn and take this 6-week mental fitness program. And the mental fitness program is designed as a program to help you lead as many are, a happier and more productive life, but it's based in science. It's based in learning how to shift the neural pathways in your brain. And it focuses on 10 fear-based saboteurs who create all these lies and justifications and narratives in our head, and helps to shift saboteur thinking to what Shirzad refers to as sage-based thinking. So recognizing what your triggers are, when you get triggered, and putting into play a series of exercises that he calls PIQue reps. They're like little mini meditations where you literally create the space to move in to the right side of your brain from the left side of your brain. And what I loved about this is that I felt it was really rooted in recovery programs. So there is a term in recovery called contrary action. Have you ever heard of a term, contrary action, at all? So contrary action is just that, contrary. It's an opposite action to what you normally would do, right? So in the terms of a recovery program, let's say someone has a drinking problem, and on Tuesday afternoons at 2:00, they walk down the left side of the street. They stop into the bar and grill and they have a drink or two. Next Tuesday, they walk down the right side of the street and they go into Pete's Coffee and have a coffee. It's contrary. The theory is that if you take contrary actions enough times, it no longer becomes contrary. You're rewiring the grooves in your brain. So what resonated with me with mental fitness is that you can actually begin to notice this within 6 weeks by doing these exercises. And what's really cool about it is that you do an assessment to identify what your top saboteurs are and how much impact and influence that they have in your life. So, for example, aside from the judge that everybody has, right? Everybody has the judge is the conductor. My top saboteurs are hyperachiever, pleaser, and avoider. I might be the world's greatest procrastinator, right? But a lot of that is rooted in my perfectionism. Because when I was a kid, things came really easy for me, right? I was a natural athlete. I was really good in school. So I just thought throughout my whole life, things were going to come easy for me. Well, when they weren't or didn't any longer, I would stop doing them. Or if I'm working on something now even that is tough for me to do, let's say there's something technical or something that has to do with social media that I'm not confident with, I will procrastinate it like nobody's business, right? But then on the hyperachiever side, it was never enough. Every job that I went to, it was, okay, I got this job now, what's going to be next? What did you do for me lately? As opposed, and so when each saboteur has strengths, right? So you can lean into the strengths of the saboteur. But when you overuse the saboteur, or you get into the fear-based side of how they operate. And that's when you end up, those negative loops begin to happen. So it's a whole program around that. I incorporate mental fitness into the work that I do. in addition to the coactive coaching, training, and also another modality that I'm currently working with a coach who actually was one of my first my first coaches at CTI, which is called badass coaching, which I absolutely love. And I'm bringing a lot of my clients, leaders that I'm coaching now, into this badass modality that my coach has created. And you're laughing, Rob.
I'm curious what it is. Yeah.
All right, so badass. I knew you were going to ask that.
I can't help it.
So badass is an acronym for bold, authentic, disruptive, agile, supportive, and spacious. And it leans into the 5 knowledge centers with the coaching. So it identifies the 5 knowledge centers as your head, which is where we spend most of our time, right? 98% of our time reasoning. The heart, which is empathy, compassion. The gut, which is where your intuition lies. Your groin, which is where passion lives. And your hands, which is action. So it really works to take leaders out of their head and have them embody where their focus area wants to be. Do I really want to focus on more boldness in my leadership? Do I need my authenticity to show through? Do I want to be more disruptive? And it's really what resonates with me about it is that it really kind of works in this whole VUCA environment of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, right? Because leaders today need to be able to shift, change, be fluid, be flexible. There's not one definition any longer for leadership. And as I've begun to incorporate this into my work, I've been really surprised at what's come up around this. So I have this leader that I'm working with who is a hard-charging Wall Street executive. And you can only imagine. I mean, it is like straight. It is like this. And he runs a not-for-profit organization. And he's struggling with employees, right? Because it's a different mentality in the not-for-profit world than it is in the corporate world. So we were going through, and he is bold, he is authentic, God, he is disruptive. So I asked him, and we were working this exercise this last week, I said, where's the area that you really want to focus on? And he really surprised me. He goes, spaciousness. I want to be able to create space for myself, for my people to evolve, for myself to evolve. I want to create space so I am responding to things versus reacting to things. So what was really interesting about all this, I had put him through the mental fitness program as well. And his number one saboteur was a hyper-rational. Everything with a hyper-rational is black and white. There's only one way to do it. It's the correct way to do it. There's no areas of gray. So when a hyper-rational faces someone that is emotional, they don't know how to deal with that. They get more hyper-rational, and it causes this conflict. So his hyper-rational was so strong that it would argue with me as to whether his hyper-rational was actually showing up in the coaching session. And finally, he texted me a few weeks ago. He had been away over the holidays, and he sent me a text and he goes, I had a breakthrough. I had a breakthrough. And I'm like, holy cow. So the next time we had a session, he was telling me how all of a sudden, and he'd been doing PIQue reps and working on this and identifying areas that he was triggered by employees or triggered by his partner. I mean, it was all encompassing in his life. This hyper-rational was showing up. And he started being able to create space and pause as opposed to react. And I'm always taking this stuff back to, and why it resonates with me so much, back to recovery, because there is another saying in recovery that says, pause when agitated or doubtful, the right answer will come if you let it. So when you create space for change, back to what we were talking about earlier, when you give yourself permission to create that space, transformation takes place. So I don't know how this has all organically just come together for me. Maybe it's how I think, but the combination of the coactive, the mental fitness, the badass, has just kind of formed this inflection point in the work that I do. And it's why I love it. It's also why I'm not your typical, I don't believe, typical executive leadership coach, because I'm not formulaic in any way, shape, or form. I am going to come in and be disruptive. I am going to come in and be bold. Hopefully my authenticity is showing up. I hope that my goal is to embody everything that I'm coaching and the way that I coach, and that I'm modeling behavior for my clients. And it might not be for everybody, right? And that's okay. That's okay as well, right? That's okay as well. And you all know that as being coaches, it's about, are your clients willing, first and foremost? Are they intentional? I mean, we can be the greatest coaches in the world, but if our clients don't set an intention and aren't willing to do the work, you're kind of left empty-handed.
Change isn't possible without a willing participant.
Exactly. And I think, and in mental fitness, one of the things that Sherzad said was that he wants to put this out there because he wants to change the world. And I love that as kind of a mission. And I would bet right now there's a few thousand mental fitness coaches that have been trained, that are out in the world now, that are doing this work. And I am so humbled to be part of that group that can talk about these kinds of things and see how it impacts people's lives and their productivity. I mean, that's what drives my passion. I interrupted you. You were going to say something.
Well, no, I just think it's a very exciting time to be a leadership coach, isn't it? That there's such a dynamic variety of approaches out there in our space as coaches right now, right? Like, I think that's very, very exciting to be at an inflection point like you just described, because of all of these different modalities that we're discovering as coaches that really can amplify the impact of our leaders.
I think it's amazing. I mean, I really do. I never thought when I got into this, 8 years ago, that this is what it's going to evolve to, and how the definition of leadership is changing, you know. But I'm finding, though, there's some constants. There's some consistencies, though, no matter what modality that you're coaching in, as it relates to skills and things that leaders today in 2024 need to have, right? And where I'm kind of coming to is, one, leaders today need to be curious, right? And that involves active listening. You can't be curious if you're not actively listening. And that's one of the things we talk about in badass coaching, is identifying the three different levels of listening, which is also very consistent with the coactive model too. There's three different levels of listening. Empathy. I think empathy for a leader today is incredibly important. Learn how to lead from beyond the head. Anybody that's a leader, most people that are leaders, have the resume, have the experience. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in that leadership role. But really being able to lead, find out when you need to lead from your heart. Learn how to use your intuition. Randy Ross last week was talking about the remarkable company. Collaboration. Leaders need to be able and be willing to collaborate. And probably the most important thing with a leader is understand the value of your people and investing in your people. As a leader, your job is to influence people in a positive way, for the best outcomes. People ultimately grow your business. I'm a partner in an organization called the Predictive Index. I don't know if you're familiar with the Predictive Index, and I've been working with PI now for about 4.5 years. And I love the work with PI because really understanding people's natural motivations, their drives and behaviors, and then creating a strategy around that and putting that into a business context, I think is absolutely brilliant. And I use PI actually as a cornerstone for my coaching work as well. And again, we've been organically, I was able to actually connect some of the dots between PI, natural motivations, drives, and behaviors, and saboteurs from mental fitness. And that's actually how our company name, PIQue, it's PIQue, developed. It was a combination of predictive index, which is PI, and positive intelligence, which is PIQue. And that's how the PIQue came about. And it came about in a coaching conversation with a client who had certain drives, and I think it was her dominant factor in PI. And then it rolled over into that she had this really high control saboteur. And we were able to connect those dots for her. So I always tell myself I should write all this stuff down. I should kind of keep track. It just flows for me. So I don't.
Last question while you're flowing, and the most important question of them all. What do you want the legacy of all this work to be someday? Yeah. This mission that you're on, all of these evolutions that you've described, where do you want all of this to end up when the shot clock runs out?
Yeah, when the sharp claw comes out, I would like people that I walked the walk and I did the talk. And I showed up perfectly imperfect and modeled and showed something people want more of in their lives. I think when the rubber hits the road, and that I impacted people in a real and authentic way. So when the question gets asked, what is it like to be on the other side of me, bringing all of that back, that's what I would strive for.
I love it. For folks out there, if you want to connect and learn more about what Ron's got going on, PIQue.coach, so PIQue.coach. That's the website. I've dropped Ron's LinkedIn in the podcast notes. It's just Ron Garfield, but it's in the podcast notes as well. Is there anywhere you want folks to find you that I didn't mention?
Yeah, well, obviously the website, LinkedIn, and I distribute a weekly email called This Coach's Perspective, which is an assortment of different coaching things that I write about in I think, a pretty unique format and style. Hats off to Axios for creating a smart brevity format, which I've learned how to write from. They could send me an email, and I'd be happy at ron@PIQue.coach, and I would be more than happy and humbled to add them to my mailing list.
Amazing. So folks, ron@PIQue.coach. I'll drop that in the podcast notes. Just shoot him a message and get signed up for his newsletter. Now, obviously for us, hit subscribe to Leadership Launchpad Project. Drop us a rating and review on Apple and Spotify, and share it with any leaders in your life. I wanted to have Ron on today to talk a little bit about the saboteur work that he's doing, as it's very similar to what we're doing with IFS, and it's a different way of explaining it, but it's also an incredibly useful. I use the assessments a lot with folks to sort of understand quickly and effectively some of their top saboteurs, which we often go to work on afterwards. And so definitely check that out. It's free online. So if you just Google saboteur assessment, you can just take the assessment. It's on positiveintelligence.com. So check that out too. Susan, is there anything you want to leave folks with today?
Just love this conversation. It's so exciting, right? I just want to put emphasis on the fact that we have more tools and modalities and resources than we've ever had in human history as leaders. So there really is no excuse, right, folks, for us to be able to go on this type of journey within. And it can be so much fun when you start to play with all of these different, psychometric tests and the ability to read data based on these tests. I just think it's a great time to be in this space. And I really am celebrating that after our conversation today. Thank you, sir. I'm going to have to check this one out. Positive Intelligence.
Thank you all. This has been fantastic. Thank you very, very much. I loved it.
Thank you for joining us, Ron. And for me, this is exactly where we started, right? And we talk about the hero's journey sometimes on this show, and it requires a mentor or an event or a person to pique the interest, pun intended, to put on your warrior hat and to go into the cave and fight the dragon to find your pearl of individuation. And I hope our conversation today with Ron gave you that interest to go dive into it, because ultimately the way to go and the way to start doing it is to put on your cape and be the hero. Ron, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye, everyone.